I've got my eyes on both of these winter storms, as you know, and one of them's coming January 5th through 8th, the other January 8th through 11th, both of them looking strong with snow for parts of the Northeast, as well as parts of the Midwest and Great Lakes. In this video, I've got your actual impact forecast and what you can expect using an average of models. And let's get into system number one right off the bat. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe and leave any comments and questions you have down below in the chat box. But for now, let's take a look at this. We've got snowfall into our Friday early morning, pushing into parts of eastern Colorado, southwest Kansas. We've got rainfall into parts of southeast Oklahoma, as well as eastern Texas and into the Arklatex region, maybe some embedded thunderstorms. But notice there's going to be a little bit of a new piece of low pressure system that's going to pick this up for system number one. This is going to form around parts of southern Alabama, especially driving in that southerly flow with some rainfall and some storms into parts of the Florida Panhandle, through Atlanta, Georgia, on up through Columbia, South Carolina. And then we'll also have some snowfall trying to break out in Appalachia with some sleet as well. The snow event side of this system doesn't really get going till mid to late day Saturday, though, where we'll have some heavier snow in southeast Ohio, southern PA, and then into parts of northern Virginia, parts of Maryland as well as higher elevations of Appalachia. Also watching some of those storms back on down into South Florida for some maybe spin-up tornadoes or some damaging winds, though the severe weather threat doesn't look to be extreme out of this system. And then we'll track the snow side of things all the way through southern New England and the Northeast. In fact, let's go ahead and get into the regional timeline and kind of zoom on in at what we've got going on with this system. Here we go into our morning time frame on our Saturday. This is around sunrise, so this is January 6th around sunrise. Some light to moderate snowfall maybe pushing through parts of Chicago, northern Indiana getting in on some of this. Also some sleet precipitation into parts of northwest South Carolina. We've got this in western North Carolina and the mountains of eastern Tennessee. Also this very heavy stripe of some rain into parts of Georgia, southeast Alabama, and Florida. And again, along that is where we would watch out for maybe the potential of some embedded heavier rainfall, maybe some flooding threats, as well as a lower end severe weather threat. Saturday around mid-afternoon, again, this is when that snow begins breaking out over parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, as well as northern Virginia. That's right as we get that flow directly off the Atlantic here. And then we'll also have rainfall pushing through Central Florida, maybe around Orlando, as well as the South Carolina coastline around Myrtle Beach. So some of those areas getting in on some heavier rain. And then this pushes on into central PA. I think around 7 to 8 p.m. time frame on your Saturday is when it's going to be snowing pretty much over the entire state of Pennsylvania. Some of this heavy into southern New York as well. So we'll see if this could make its way on up towards Albany, New York as well. Maybe a little bit of light to moderate snowfall there. Some heavier accumulation possible. But really through central parts of PA, that looks like a bullseye out of this system. But remember, we've got a little warm front attached to every low pressure system, and this one is going to kind of drive some, warmer air in some levels of the atmosphere up here into parts of New Jersey, Pennsylvania. This is a little bit overdone, I think, in this model, the way we're looking at this model, but nonetheless, Euro model showing some sleet, trying to kind of line up at the back end of that snowfall here. So around New York City, even if you start off as some snow, might turn over to some sleet and maybe even rain for a good chunk of this event as well, as that low pressure again kind of drives up some of those warmer air, part of the warmer air mass coming off the Atlantic there along the parts of Long Island and Cape Cod. But it does look like we'll see some very heavy snow work its way through parts of the Northeast, and even parts of Maine could get in on some heavier snowfall rates. Maybe a little bit of wraparound snowfall moving back on through the Midwest out of this as well. But again, nothing big in a way of a Midwest snow event out of this system. Now, taking a look at some of the snowfall we've got out of the Euro model averages here, and this is what we're kind of looking at as this makes its way through Appalachia. Heavier totals, maybe 2 to 4 inches in many parts of the western North Carolina mountains, through parts of the western state of Virginia, southeast West Virginia, some of these areas getting in on some heavier snowfall, northern Kentucky as well. This kind of misses parts of, say, north central Ohio now at this point, with some snowfall moving through parts of northeastern PA, at least with the solution. And it does look like some of that snow that we get through parts of eastern Pennsylvania, maybe just north and west, especially of Philadelphia, could be on the heavier side here. So through northern parts of the state, into parts of south central New York, through parts of Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, and then on over towards the coastline of Maine, looking like to get some big totals, upwards of a foot in this area I circled. That's certainly possible out of the Euro model, but the Euro model has been a little bit more bullish with the storm overall, and it does kind of keep the snowfall a little bit further north of New York City in terms of accumulation, just because of the way that warmer air tries to slide on in and kind of keep this towards a sleet and rain event. So we'll monitor the totals there closely, but right now not looking like much in New York City, but the totals quickly add up just north of town, and that could shift. Now your model averages, this is a lot more tame, and I think this is what we should go with for now with our snowfall totals. I'm showing a big swath in that area I just circled of about 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, but in these pockets of parts of eastern PA, northern New Jersey, southern New York, just north of New York City, And then right around and just west of the Boston area, these areas we could pick up some of those lighter blue shades. You see some purples in the mix. That's where we could get closer to maybe 5 to 8, maybe up to upwards of 9 inches of snowfall. But again, this is kind of the better model to look at for now, the model blend. Again, look at this. The model blend showing maybe an inch to an inch and a half of snow in New York City, 4.2 inches over there in Boston. Areas in between like Middletown, Poughkeepsie, Waterbury, these areas in southern New York and Connecticut, around 4 inches of snow. So again, kind of in that 3 to 6 inch range is something to kind of look at for now. So again, not as huge of a snowstorm as some people are advertising with, major conditions out of this. Also, what we have to watch out for is that little ice line that kind of rides up Appalachia here from Greenville, South Carolina, all the way on up through places like, say, Charlottesville there in Virginia. We could see some pretty considerable ice totals, especially in this area I just circled, where maybe a tenth to a quarter of an inch of ice accretion is possible. And this is where we could certainly see anywhere you're in a color on that map for ice accretion, could certainly see some glazes on roadways, but this is kind of a sneaky ice event. And as that rain it changes over from that freezing rain to regular rain, you might not even know that it was freezing rain to begin with. Slippery roads, treacherous travel there in those higher elevations. Rainfall totals will be quite heavy, especially in parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, southern Alabama, southern Georgia, the panhandle of Florida, as well as the Carolina coastlines. Anywhere we see rain in the mid-Atlantic, a lot of spots picking up at least half an inch of rain with locally higher amounts. Of course, the key was just on your screen so you could find your area. Now, moving on to system number 2 with the GFS model, okay? I like the GFS model and the way it's playing the system out, showing early Monday morning, so this is as we head towards January 8th in the early morning hours. Some rain going into parts of Oklahoma City through Dallas on down to Houston. Some heavier snowfall through parts of northwestern Kansas into the Hayes area, some of these zones through central Nebraska as well, getting in on snow. This low quickly forming, and it could erupt a severe weather potential. We've already got that 15% severe risk issued by the Storm Prediction Center near that area I just circled. And then, of course, maybe a snow shield here through parts of the central plains out of this, and similar areas that got that Christmas time blizzard, except wrapping around from a different direction, right? As that upper level low kind of swirled around over the plains. So we'll kind of have to see how the system evolves, but I kind of want to move through this GFS model a little bit slower than I normally would a model, just to kind of show you some of the different things going on here. Look at how this low pressure system has that cool air rushing in behind it. That's why that cold frontal line is so defined there through parts of Louisiana and Arkansas. By this point, severe weather may be moving through parts of the mid-south and towards the southeast, but also what we're going to see here is that snowfall in the northern end moving through parts of Missouri, Kansas, the Midwest, into parts of the Ohio Valley as well, but the northern Ohio Valley at that. The warm front's going to be here at this point. This is around Tuesday early morning. Now, this is just one model, the GFS, but overall the Euro in decent agreement. The cold front right along this line. Warm air is surging northward through the southeast, not only bringing up a severe weather threat in that region, but it's also going to kind of hamper the snowfall, or at least change it over to rain in that eastern snow sector. So if you're in that snow in Indiana and Ohio, notice how that turns on over in this area I'm circling right now to rain by the time we make our way to Tuesday, even just mid-morning, and then that brief snow line heads on over into parts of Pennsylvania. Again, let me circle this area. Notice how it turns from blues to greens as the system progresses. Look at how that turns on over to some rainfall. So you might get quick and heavy accumulation out of this event, but it might not last long as it turns over to rain there, so I don't want to get your hopes up with this system either for big snow. And then we also kind of get severe weather to kind of move through maybe parts of the Carolinas. But this zone I'm circling right here, I think this is where we could actually stay in that colder pocket the entire time with some more moderate, maybe even heavier snow. So this does include Chicago, parts of Green Bay, Wisconsin, back on through parts of central Missouri. I would monitor that zone for some of the heaviest and actually lasting accumulation of snowfall. And again, notice how the snow that pushes through parts of the Northeast, New England, Maine, all these areas, that snow is just forced on up into parts of southern Canada. The next thing you know, it's turning over to rain, with the maybe only accumulating snow that can last come in with a little lake effect and wraparound snow event behind this. Okay, so we'll have to monitor the snowfall situation closely, but what we're also monitoring very closely is the severe weather potential. Of course, right now the trough on your screen heading on off towards the east was the one with our first system. Our second system bringing along a neutrally tilted or even kind of a negatively tilted trough here. And what that does is kind of brings up that severe weather threat here into kind of the areas I'm circling right now. So over parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, the coastline there in the Gulf Coast of Florida, especially southern South Carolina, parts of eastern North Carolina. Those yellows on that screen indicating a very potent area of mid and upper level winds. And here's another thing that's going to not only kind of showcase our severe weather potential with that low-level moisture in abundance. Dew points in the 60s and 70s. That's plenty for severe weather here over parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. Dew points just measuring some of that moisture. But notice as that warm front lifts north, pretty much if you're south of this line, I mean, that's where the severe weather potential is at least existent. But it's mostly going to be as the southerly flow moves northward that we'll just see that rain infiltrate parts of Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio. So just keep that in mind. Again, that's kind of where we could see that changeover from the snow to the rain. But this whole area I'm circling right here, this is where that moisture is really conducive for severe thunderstorms. And that's why I've still got my graphic that I made yesterday up here on the screen. I think this is still pretty valid with the highest risk for damaging tornadoes and maybe an all-hazard nighttime threat back here over the Arklatex, but that severe weather threat kind of riding the Gulf Coast from Monday into Tuesday in parts of the low country of South Carolina, southeast North Carolina, as well as the panhandle of Florida getting in on a threat, I think, as we go Monday night and into that Tuesday time frame. Forecast snowfall with the model blend out of system number 2. Again, we've already got snow in the Mountain West, very heavy, foot plus and higher elevations. We've got the snowfall on the ground now and here into parts of the Northeast. But look at what kind of happens as that system slides through. I don't really want you to focus on those accumulations into parts of Indiana, Ohio, and the Northeast, because remember, those are going to kind of fade away as it looks. At least right now, things can change with that range switch in those zones. So that area I just circled there in the Northeast, that's where that warm air will take over. But back here in the Midwest, the Central Plains, we could get a solid half-foot plus of some snowfall, even in parts of Chicago, southeast Wisconsin, through the Gulf of Michigan, maybe even a foot plus in some communities. So we'll monitor that. We're also looking at winds. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with that second system. I mean, it could bring 30 to 40 mile per hour winds over pretty much the entirety of the eastern United States as that kind of cyclonic flow swirls around like this. And look at how this system's going to continue to progress on off towards the east. Long Island, New York, some of these spots here along the immediate east coast, 40 to 50, upwards of 55 miles per hour in the way of wind gusts in a model blend, okay? So this is already pretty tame. We can see even higher gusts in some individual models, of course. So we'll have to monitor everything as we get closer and look at how far above average this precipitation is over pretty much the entire country in the 6 to 10 day outlook. And there's also going to be a lot of cold air forcing in from the west behind this system, as you can see here. It is going to be a very cold time ahead in the parts of the Rockies, the Four Corners. We'll touch on that in future videos. Warmer than average air here in the Northeast ahead of this system. But that is all I got for this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button, leave a comment down below. Love to hear from you, and let me know where you're watching from. Accurate, easy to understand, passionate forecasting right here. Thanks for watching.